The strangest part wasn't seeing my husband standing beside my best friend at the resort reception. It wasn't the passports in his hand. It wasn't even the way she stood behind him, with that uncomfortable little smile, as if she already knew she had crossed a line. The strangest part was the receptionist looking directly at me and saying, "Ma'am, you're the person who made this reservation." I remember staring at her, then at my husband, then at my best friend. And for the first time in 12 years of marriage, I understood something terrifying. My husband had not simply gone on vacation with another woman. He had taken the vacation I had secretly planned for us, the vacation I had paid for, the vacation I had booked under my name, and somehow, I was the only person who hadn't been invited. My name is Naomi Carter, and before that afternoon, I thought the worst thing a husband could do was fall out of love with his wife. I was wrong. Sometimes the worst thing isn't losing someone's love. It's discovering that while you were protecting the marriage, they were quietly rewriting the story of what your marriage had been. And what happened next at that resort would force me to question every memory I had trusted for years. There was a time when Daniel Carter used to say I was the most interesting woman he'd ever met. He said it on our third date. We were sitting outside a little Caribbean restaurant on a rainy Thursday evening, sharing one plate of fried plantains because neither of us had enough money to order dessert. Daniel had laughed when I tried to balance a plantain on the edge of my fork. "You know what I like about you?" he asked. "What?" "You make ordinary things feel like an adventure." I smiled. "That's because you're broke." He laughed so loudly that people at the next table turned around. Back then, we were young. We didn't have expensive cars. We didn't have a beautiful home. We didn't have vacations where someone carried our luggage to a room overlooking the ocean. We had a tiny apartment, 2 mismatched chairs, and a kitchen where the refrigerator made a noise every 6 minutes. But Daniel never complained. At least, not then. We built our lives slowly. Daniel eventually started a logistics company with a friend from college. I worked in corporate event planning, and over the years my career became surprisingly successful. I learned how to negotiate hotel contracts, manage luxury events, handle demanding clients, and turn disasters into things nobody noticed. That was the part of me Daniel used to admire. He called me the woman who could fix anything. But somewhere along the way, fixing everything became my problem. Bills, family gatherings, his mother's birthday, our mortgage, his business dinners, his doctor's appointments. Even the flowers on Valentine's Day. I became the person who remembered everything, and Daniel became the person who assumed I would. At first, I didn't mind. Marriage isn't always 50-50. Sometimes one person carries 70 while the other carries 30. Then life changes, and the numbers switch. Or at least that's what I believed. The first time Daniel called me boring, I laughed. We were having dinner at home. I'd spent nearly 2 hours preparing his mother's favorite coconut rice and grilled fish because she was visiting the following morning. Daniel was scrolling through his phone. "You know what your problem is?" he said. I looked up. "My problem? You've become boring." I smiled awkwardly. "That's romantic." "I'm serious." He didn't even look up. "You never want to do anything spontaneous anymore." I stared at him. "I planned the entire weekend with your mother." "That's not what I mean." "What do you mean?" He finally looked at me. "You're predictable, Naomi." Something inside me went quiet. Not broken, just quiet. Because there is a difference between someone saying, "I'm unhappy," and someone telling you that the qualities you once loved about yourself have become defects. I didn't argue. I simply asked, "What would you like me to do?" Daniel shrugged. "Live a little." Those 3 words stayed with me. Live a little. So I decided to do exactly that. Just not in the way he expected. 3 weeks later, I secretly booked a 5-night vacation for our 12th wedding anniversary. Not just any vacation, a private oceanfront resort in St. Lucia. I'd been there once for work and remembered the place immediately. The lobby smelled faintly of cedar and tropical flowers. The floors were polished marble. There was a huge glass wall overlooking the water. And at sunset, the entire ocean turned orange. I thought Daniel would love it. More importantly, I thought we needed it. Just the two of us. No family, no business associates, no phones, no responsibilities. I booked the best suite available. Ocean view, private terrace, breakfast included, a couple's massage, a sunset sailing excursion, and dinner at a small restaurant built on a cliff overlooking the Caribbean. I even arranged for the hotel to put a handwritten note in the room. 12 years. Still choosing you. I paid for everything myself. I didn't tell Daniel. I wanted to surprise him. For weeks, I smiled every time he came home late. Every time he complained about work. Every time he said he was tired. I kept thinking, just wait. You'll see. I thought the woman he called boring was about to surprise him. I didn't know another woman was about to surprise me. Her name was Tasha Monroe, my best friend. We had known each other since university. Tasha had been beside me through almost everything. When my father died, she slept on my sofa for 3 nights because she didn't want me to be alone. When Daniel and I got married, she helped me choose my dress. When I had a miscarriage 2 years into our marriage, she was the first person I called. I trusted her, with the kind of trust that doesn't require explanation. That was why what happened later hurt differently. It wasn't simply betrayal. It was the betrayal of someone I had already given permission to stand inside my life. And perhaps that was why I ignored the warning signs. There were several. Small ones. Easy to explain. Tasha started asking unusual questions. What resort are you and Daniel going to for your anniversary? I laughed. How do you know we're going somewhere? She paused. You mentioned it. I didn't. Another pause. Then she smiled. Maybe you told me before. I didn't think much of it. Another time, she asked. Does Daniel still prefer the window seat when he flies? I looked at her. Why? I'm just asking. She shrugged. I let it go. Looking back, I realize betrayal rarely arrives wearing a black coat and announcing itself. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a question. Said. 2 days before our anniversary, Daniel came home unusually excited. I've got something planned, he said. I looked up from my laptop. For us? He smiled. Maybe. My heart jumped. I almost told him about St. Lucia. Almost. Instead, I smiled. Then I guess I'll wait. That night, while he slept, I stood in the bathroom looking at myself in the mirror. I was 38 years old. There were faint lines around my eyes. My hair was pulled into a loose bun. I looked tired, but I also looked like myself. I remembered Daniel saying I had become boring. And for the first time, I wondered whether I had spent so much time becoming the woman he needed that I had forgotten the woman I wanted to be. Still, I believed our anniversary could change something. I believed people could find each other again. The next morning, I received an email from the resort. Reservation confirmed. I smiled. Then another email arrived. Guest information updated. I frowned. I opened it. There were 2 names attached to the reservation. Mine and Daniel's. I wasn't surprised. I had added his information when I made the booking. Then I noticed something else. A 3rd guest had been added. My stomach tightened. I read the name again. Tasha Monroe. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. I checked the reservation number. Same number. Same suite. Same dates. Same booking. I called the resort immediately. Hello, I need to clarify something about my reservation. The woman on the phone asked for the confirmation number. I gave it to her. There was a pause. Then she said, Yes, Miss Carter. I can see the reservation. Why is another guest listed? I'm sorry? There's a 3rd guest. Another pause. Yes. Ms. Monroe. I didn't add her. The woman hesitated. According to our system, the guest list was updated yesterday. By whom? I can't see the name of the person who made the change from this screen. My hands were cold. Can you tell me if the reservation has been used? No, ma'am. Check-in is scheduled for tomorrow. I thanked her and ended the call. I sat there for nearly 10 minutes. My mind raced through every possible explanation. Maybe Tasha had accidentally been added. Maybe Daniel had done it as a surprise. Maybe the hotel had made a mistake. Maybe. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Tasha. Girl, are you ready for your anniversary? I stared at the screen. I typed, "Yes, are you?" I deleted it. Then typed, "What are you talking about?" Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "Very ready." She replied almost immediately, "Good. You deserve some fun." I looked at those words for a long time. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy, because suddenly I was no longer confused. I was watching. The Chinese. The next day, Daniel told me he had to travel for work. "Just for 2 days," he said. I looked at him across the breakfast table. 2 days? Maybe 3. Our anniversary is tomorrow. I know. You forgot? His face changed. Of course not. I waited. He reached across the table and touched my hand. "Naomi, I have something important to handle." "What?" "Business." I nodded. "Of course." He looked relieved. That was when I knew something was wrong, because Daniel Carter had always been terrible at hiding things. But that morning, he wasn't nervous. He was comfortable. Too comfortable. He kissed my forehead before leaving. "Don't worry, I'll make it up to you." I watched him walk toward the door. Then I asked, "Daniel?" He stopped. "Yeah? Do you still love me?" His back remained toward me. For 3 seconds, he didn't answer. Then he turned around. "Why would you ask me that?" I smiled. "No reason." He walked away. The door closed, and I stood alone in the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. Instead, I opened my laptop. I logged into the resort's guest portal, and there it was. The booking. My name. Daniel's name. Tasha's name. But beneath the guest information was something I hadn't seen before. Special arrangement. Private anniversary package. And underneath it, in the notes section, guest requested that spouse not be informed until arrival. My heart stopped. Spouse. Not wife. Not guest. Spouse. Someone had specifically contacted the resort about hiding the trip from a spouse. And suddenly, Daniel's behavior made sense. But one question didn't. If he had planned to surprise Tasha, why was the entire vacation booked under my name? I called the resort again. This time, I asked to speak with a manager. A man named Mr. Laurent came on the line. "Ms. Carter, I understand this is confusing. You have no idea. I've reviewed the booking history. And?" He hesitated. "There's something you should know." My stomach tightened. "What?" The person who modified the reservation didn't simply add another guest. What did they do? They changed the payment authorization. To what? Your original card remains attached to the reservation. I closed my eyes. Why? I don't know. Can you tell me who requested the change? Another pause. Then he said, "Yes." My heart began pounding. "Who?" "Your husband." I gripped the edge of the desk. "Are you certain?" "Yes." "Was he alone?" Mr. Laurent hesitated. "No." I waited. "Who was with him?" He lowered his voice. "Ms. Monroe." I couldn't speak. Mr. Laurent continued. "There is one more thing." "What?" "The reservation was not changed from your husband's account." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It was changed, using your original booking credentials." My blood ran cold. "My credentials?" "Yes." "That doesn't make sense." "I agree." He paused. "Because whoever made the changes knew your reservation details." I stared at the screen. My reservation, my card, my credentials, my husband, my best friend. And suddenly the question wasn't whether Daniel was cheating. The question was much darker. How long had they been planning this? Round. I spent that evening going through every detail of the past 6 months. Not obsessively. Carefully. There was a difference. I checked bank statements, travel receipts, calendar entries, restaurant reservations. Nothing obvious. Then I opened our shared cloud account. I found a folder Daniel had created 3 months earlier. It was labeled Q4 Logistics. I almost ignored it. Then I noticed the folder had been accessed that morning. I opened it. There were spreadsheets, contracts, invoices, employee records. Nothing unusual. Until I reached the final document. It was a scanned agreement. My name was on it. I read the first page. Then the second. By the third page, my hands were shaking. It wasn't a business contract. It was a legal authorization. And it contained a clause I had never agreed to. A clause transferring control of something into Daniel's name. I read it twice. Then 3 times. There was a signature at the bottom. My signature. Except I had never signed it. I knew that signature. Because it was mine. But there was something wrong with it. The handwriting was almost perfect. Almost. Someone had copied my signature. My husband wasn't simply taking my best friend on vacation. Someone had been preparing something behind my back, and the vacation was only one piece of it. I called my attorney. She answered on the 4th ring. Naomi? I need you to look at something. What happened? I think someone forged my signature. She became silent. Send me the document. I emailed it. A few minutes later, she called back. Her voice had changed. Naomi, where did you get this? Daniel's cloud folder. Does Daniel know you have it? No. Good. I swallowed. What is it? I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning. Why? I don't want to discuss this over the phone. Please. She sighed. The document gives Daniel control over a company asset that isn't actually his. What asset? Another pause. Your company shares. I felt the room tilt. My shares? Yes. I stared at the screen. Years earlier, before Daniel's logistics business became successful, I had invested money into a small transportation technology company. I had nearly forgotten about it. Over the years, those shares had grown considerably. Not billionaire money, not some fantasy fortune, but enough to matter. Enough that someone could destroy a marriage over it. I sat down. Why would Daniel need my shares? I don't know. Then my attorney said something that I would remember for the rest of my life. Naomi, I think you need to consider that the vacation may not be about the vacation. I looked at the photograph of Daniel and me sitting on our wedding day. 12 years. One promise. One life. And now a question I didn't want to ask. What if the woman standing beside him wasn't the person he was trying to replace me with? What if she was helping him take something from me? Seth. The next morning, I did something Daniel never expected. I packed a suitcase. Not because I planned to confront him, because I planned to go to St. Lucia. Alone. I wanted to see what they would do when they believed I wasn't coming. I changed my flight. I arranged transportation from the airport. I told nobody except my attorney. Not my mother. Not my siblings. Not even Tasha. I needed to know the truth before I decided what to do with it. When I arrived at the resort the following afternoon, the ocean was exactly as beautiful as I remembered. Palm trees moved gently in the wind. The lobby smelled of flowers and polished wood. People laughed near the bar. A couple took photographs beside the entrance. It looked like paradise, but I felt nothing. I walked toward the reception desk. The receptionist smiled. Welcome. I handed her my passport. Reservation under Naomi Carter, she typed. Her smile disappeared. She looked at the screen. Then at me. Miss Carter? Yes. You're already checked in. I know. No, ma'am. She looked confused. You were checked in this morning. My heart began pounding. Who checked in? She looked at the screen again, then carefully said, Mr. Daniel Carter. And the other guest? She hesitated. Miss Tasha Monroe. I nodded slowly. Which room? She gave me the suite number. The exact suite I had booked. The exact room where I had planned to surprise my husband. I looked toward the elevator. Then the receptionist said, There's something else. I turned. What? Your husband left instructions that nobody should disturb him. I almost laughed. Nobody? She nodded. Except who? She glanced at her computer. Except the person listed as the primary guest. My eyebrows tightened. That's me. The receptionist's expression changed. Yes, ma'am. She turned the monitor slightly toward herself. Then she looked back at me. That's why I'm confused. About what? She swallowed. Because Mr. Carter told us you wouldn't be arriving. My chest tightened. What? He said you had canceled. I stared at her. I never canceled. I understand. No, you don't. I leaned closer. Did he say why? She shook her head. He only said you wouldn't be coming. Then she looked down at the reservation, and suddenly her face went pale. Miss Carter. What? There was another instruction added to your booking. What instruction? She turned the monitor toward me. I read it, and everything inside me went still. The instruction said, if Naomi Carter arrives, notify me immediately. Do not allow her to access the private villa until I confirm. I read it again, then a third time. Daniel had expected me. He knew I might come. He had prepared for it. This wasn't an impulsive vacation. It wasn't a careless affair. It was a plan, and whoever had written that instruction had been waiting for me to show up. I looked at the elevator. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what I would find upstairs. I was afraid of what they already knew about me. Then my phone buzzed. One message, from an unknown number. I opened it. There was only one sentence. Naomi, if you love your husband, don't go upstairs. I stared at the message. Then another arrived. This one contained a photograph. I opened it. It was Daniel. But he wasn't standing beside Tasha. He was standing beside someone else. Someone I recognized. Someone who had no reason to be in St. Lucia. And beneath the photograph were 6 words that changed everything. Your husband doesn't know the truth. I looked toward the elevator again. The doors opened, and at that exact moment, Tasha stepped out. She saw me. Her face collapsed. Not into guilt, not into anger, into fear. She whispered my name, Naomi. I didn't move. She looked behind her, then back at me. And I finally understood. Whatever Daniel had planned, Tasha hadn't been the person in control. She had been afraid of someone too. And before I could ask her who, the elevator doors began closing behind her. Then a man's voice came from inside. A voice I knew. A voice that should never have been at that resort. Naomi? The doors stopped, and I looked up. Because standing inside that elevator was the last person on earth I expected to see. And he was holding the same document with my forged signature. The man standing inside the elevator was my husband's older brother, Michael. I hadn't seen him in almost 4 years. Not because we had argued, not because there had been some dramatic family feud. Michael had simply disappeared from our lives. At least, that was what Daniel had told me. He moved overseas, Daniel had said. He doesn't want anything to do with the family. He's dealing with some personal problems. Every explanation had been different, but the man standing in front of me didn't look like someone who wanted nothing to do with his family. He looked exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red. And in his right hand was the document carrying my forged signature. For several seconds, none of us spoke. Then Michael stepped out of the elevator. Naomi, he said quietly. I looked at Tasha. She was crying. Tell me what's happening, I said. Michael looked at her. Tasha shook her head. You tell her. Michael took a slow breath. Your husband has been lying to you. I almost smiled. I already know that. No. He shook his head. You know he's lying. You don't know why. That sentence changed the atmosphere completely. I folded my arms. Then explain. Michael looked around the lobby. Not here. I pointed toward a private sitting area near the windows. Then sit down. We walked over together. Tasha followed. Michael placed the document on the table. This signature isn't the only thing that's been forged. I stared at him. What else? Your identity was used to authorize several transactions. My stomach tightened. How many? Enough. That's not an answer. 7. I froze. 7? Michael nodded. 7 transactions over the last 11 months. Tasha covered her mouth. I looked at her. You knew? She shook her head quickly. No. You knew something. Her eyes filled with tears. I knew Daniel was hiding something. That isn't the same thing. I know. Then tell me. She looked down. I was afraid. Of Daniel? She didn't answer. Michael did. Not exactly. I turned toward him. Then who? He leaned forward. Daniel's business partner. I frowned. Who? Michael said the name. Victor Hale. The name meant nothing to me. But Tasha reacted immediately. Her face became pale. "You know him," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, I don't." "You've met him." "When?" 3 years ago." I searched my memory. Nothing. Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He opened a photograph. I stared at the image. There was Daniel. There was Victor. And there was me. I was standing beside them at a charity event. I remembered the night. Daniel had introduced me to dozens of people. I had smiled, shaken hands, taken photographs. I hadn't remembered Victor. Michael zoomed in. "Look at his hand." I did. Victor was holding a folder. On the folder was the logo of the transportation company I had invested in years earlier. I looked at Michael. What does he have to do with my shares? Michael didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Everything." 4 years earlier, Daniel's logistics company had nearly collapsed. I didn't know that. He had hidden it from me. His company had accumulated debts after a major contract fell apart. Employees weren't being paid on time. Suppliers were threatening lawsuits. Daniel had been desperate. That was when Victor Hale entered his life. Victor offered financing, but the money wasn't free. He wanted control. Not immediately. Over time. He wanted access to Daniel's company, its contracts, and eventually its assets. Daniel agreed. But there was one problem. Daniel didn't own enough. I did. My investment shares had become more valuable than either of us realized. Victor knew, and he had been waiting. Michael explained everything slowly. Daniel couldn't legally transfer your shares without your consent, so he forged my signature. Yes. And Tasha? Michael looked at her. Tasha lowered her eyes. She helped him access my information. I turned toward her. You? She began crying. I didn't know what he was going to do. You gave him my information. I thought he needed it for something else. What? She wiped her cheek. He told me he was preparing a surprise. I laughed bitterly. A surprise? Yes. He said you were planning to leave him. I stared at her. What? Tasha nodded. He told me you had been talking to someone else. I felt something crack inside me. He told you I was cheating? Yes. And you believed him? I didn't know what to believe. You could have asked me. I was scared. Of what? She looked at Michael, then at me. That he would hurt himself. Silence. I sat back. Suddenly, pieces began falling into place. Daniel had spent months telling people I was distant. Cold. Uninterested. Boring. He had slowly created a version of me that justified whatever he was preparing to do. He didn't simply want to betray me. He wanted people to believe I deserved it. That realization hurt more than the forged signature. Because betrayal becomes easier when the betrayer first convinces themselves that you're the villain. Michael continued. The vacation wasn't originally Daniel's idea. I looked at him. What do you mean? Victor planned it. Why? To get you here. I stared at him. But Daniel told the resort I wasn't coming. Exactly. I frowned. Michael leaned closer. They needed you to appear to have canceled. Why? Because if you arrived unexpectedly, they could use the situation to create a confrontation. For what? To make you look unstable. I felt cold. They wanted me to lose my temper. Yes. And then, they planned to record you. My jaw tightened. For what? Evidence. Evidence of what? That you're mentally unstable and incapable of managing your financial affairs. I couldn't speak. The plan suddenly became clear. The forged documents. The secret vacation. The hotel instructions. The lies. They weren't trying to embarrass me. They were trying to build a case against me. My own husband wanted to make me look incapable of controlling the assets that legally belonged to me. And the woman he had taken on vacation wasn't simply his lover. She had been used as part of the setup. I turned toward Tasha. Were you ever sleeping with him? She cried harder. No. I believed her. Not because I trusted her completely, because her face carried the exhaustion of someone who had been trapped in a lie for too long. I never slept with Daniel, she said. He kissed me once. I looked at her. When? 2 months ago. And you didn't tell me? I was ashamed. Why did you stay? She shook her head. I tried to leave. Then why didn't you? She looked at Michael. Because Victor threatened my brother. I went still. What? He has financial records on my family. He said if I told you anything, he'd destroy my brother's business. Michael nodded. That is how Victor operates. I looked at him. And you? Michael's expression changed. I discovered what was happening almost a year ago. Then why didn't you tell me? His eyes dropped. Because I was trying to gather evidence. You let me live with Daniel while you gathered evidence? I thought I could stop him before it reached you. But it did. Yes. Michael looked ashamed. And I'm sorry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to blame him. Tasha. Daniel. Everyone. But something inside me had changed. I realized anger was exactly what they had expected. So I refused to give them what they wanted. I picked up the forged document. Where is Daniel? Michael looked at me. Upstairs. And Victor? Probably with him. Good. Tasha stared at me. Naomi, what are you going to do? I folded the document carefully. I'm going upstairs. Michael stood. No. Yes. They're expecting you to lose control. I know. Then don't give them that. I looked at him. I won't. I smiled. But I'm still going. Suck. The elevator doors opened on the top floor. The hallway was silent. Too silent. I could hear the ocean through the open balcony doors at the end of the corridor. Michael walked beside me. Tasha stayed behind. I stopped outside the suite. There was music playing inside. Soft jazz. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Then Daniel's voice came from inside. Come in. I opened the door. Daniel was standing near the balcony. Victor sat at the table. And on the couch was a woman I didn't recognize. She was holding a folder. Daniel turned toward me. For 1 second, he looked genuinely shocked. Then his expression changed. He smiled. Naomi. I looked around. So this is the surprise. He said nothing. Victor stood. Ms. Carter. I ignored him. I looked at Daniel. You told them I wasn't coming. He smiled. I thought you canceled. No. I held up the document. You knew I'd come. His smile disappeared. Victor stepped forward. Where did you get that? I looked at him. That's your first mistake. He stopped. You asked where I got the document instead of asking whether it was authentic. Silence. Michael entered behind me. Daniel's face changed. Michael? His brother looked at him. Hello, Daniel. You shouldn't be here. Neither should I replied. Victor looked nervous. That was the first time I had seen fear in his eyes. And I knew I had the advantage. I placed the document on the table. My attorney has copies. Daniel stared at me. What attorney? The one you should have talked to before forging my signature. Victor stepped backward. Daniel looked at him, then at me. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. No, Naomi. His voice became softer. You have no idea what you're involved in. I laughed. I've been married to you for 12 years. Believe me, I'm starting to. Daniel's face hardened. You've changed. No. I looked directly into his eyes. I stopped believing you. That silenced him. Victor tried to interrupt. This is a family matter. I turned toward him. No. You made it a criminal matter when you forged my signature. His face tightened. Be careful with your accusations. I don't make accusations. I tapped the document. I collect evidence. Michael smiled faintly. Victor noticed. What evidence? Michael pulled out his phone. Enough. Victor's face lost its color. Daniel stared at his brother. What did you do? Michael answered calmly. Recorded everything. Daniel stepped toward him. You've been recording me? Not everything. Michael held up his phone. Only the things you said when you thought nobody was listening. Daniel looked at me. Naomi, please. That word. Please. The same man who had called me boring. The same man who had planned to destroy my reputation. Now he was asking me to listen. I shook my head. You don't get to ask for mercy before telling the truth. He lowered his eyes. Fine. I waited. Daniel took a breath. I never wanted to hurt you. I almost laughed. Then why did you? Because I was afraid. Of what? Losing everything. I looked at him. You were afraid of losing everything, so you tried to take everything from me. His eyes filled with tears. I thought you were going to leave. You were the one leaving. I know. No. I stepped closer. You don't know. Daniel's voice broke. I knew I had failed you. I didn't answer. He continued. You became successful. You became independent. You stopped needing me. I stared at him. That wasn't a problem until you decided my independence was an insult. He wiped his eyes. I felt useless. So you punished me? No. Yes. He had no answer. That was when I finally understood something about Daniel. His betrayal hadn't started with another woman. It had started with insecurity. He couldn't stand the possibility that the woman he loved had become strong enough to survive without him. So instead of becoming stronger himself, he tried to make me smaller. That was the real tragedy. Not the vacation. Not Tasha. Not even the money. He had mistaken dependence for love. And when I became independent, he thought I had stopped loving him. The woman sitting on the couch finally stood. I need to tell you something. I looked at her. Who are you? She hesitated. My name is Elena Hale. Victor immediately turned. Elena. She ignored him. I am Victor's daughter. My eyes widened. She opened the folder. And I've been working against my father for 6 months. Victor stepped forward. You have no idea what you're doing. Elena looked at him. I know exactly what I'm doing. She turned to me. Your shares weren't the only thing he wanted. What else? She opened the folder. Inside were copies of contracts, bank records, emails, and photographs. He wanted control of Daniel's company because the company is attached to a larger transportation network. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? Elena looked at Michael, then at Daniel, then back at me. Your father. I froze. My father? My father discovered something about your father's old business. I shook my head. My father died 8 years ago. I know. She slid a document across the table. This was found in one of his old files. I looked down. It was a partnership agreement. My father's name was on it. So was Victor's. And another name. A name I had never seen before. Daniel Carter. I looked at my husband. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Daniel? He whispered. I didn't know. You knew my father? Yes. My hands began shaking. How? He swallowed. Before I met you. Everything suddenly felt unreal. The marriage, the anniversary, the business, the shares, the vacation, all of it. I looked at Michael. Did you know? He shook his head. No. I looked at Elena. Then tell me the truth. She nodded. Your father and Victor were once business partners. Why did they separate? Because your father discovered Victor was stealing from the company. Victor shouted. That's a lie. Elena didn't flinch. My father destroyed the records. She turned toward me. But your father kept copies. My heart raced. Where? Elena looked at Daniel. He finally spoke. In your house. I stared at him. What? The records are in our house. Where? He looked down. In the old wooden cabinet in your father's study. I felt dizzy. I had never understood why Daniel insisted we keep that cabinet after my father's death. He had always said it was sentimental. He had even refused to let me throw it away when we renovated the room. Now I understood. He had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. I looked at him. How long? He whispered. Years. The room became silent. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Did you marry me because of my father? Daniel looked at me. No. I waited. He stepped closer. No, Naomi. I married you because I loved you. I wanted to believe him. Some part of me still wanted to. But love without honesty becomes something else. A memory. A habit. A cage. I turned away. I loved you too. He closed his eyes. I know. But I don't love who you became. 3 months later, The legal investigation was underway. Victor was facing multiple charges related to fraud and financial misconduct. Daniel cooperated with investigators. His company survived, but only after major restructuring. Michael took over temporary management. Tasha moved away for a while to rebuild her relationship with her brother and distance herself from everything that had happened. And me? I went home. Not to save my marriage. To save myself. The old cabinet in my father's study was still there. I opened it. Behind a false wooden panel, I found the documents. My father had known. He had kept evidence. And in one envelope was a handwritten letter addressed to me. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short. My father wrote that he had spent years believing success meant having enough money to protect the people you loved. Then he realized something. Money could protect a house. It could protect a business. It could even protect a family temporarily. But it couldn't protect a relationship built on dishonesty. At the bottom of the letter was one sentence. Never confuse being needed with being loved. I sat there for a long time. Because suddenly, Daniel's behavior made sense. And so did mine. I had spent years measuring my value by how much I could do for everyone. I cooked, planned, fixed, paid, organized, forgave. I thought being indispensable meant being loved. It didn't. And Daniel had spent years measuring his worth by how much control he had. When he lost that control, he called me boring. He called me distant. He called me selfish. But the truth was simpler. I had simply become a woman who could no longer be controlled. 6 months after the resort incident, Daniel asked to meet me. We sat in the same little Caribbean restaurant where we had eaten our first cheap dinner 12 years earlier. The same wooden tables, the same plantains, the same rain tapping against the windows. He looked older. So did I. I miss you, he said. I nodded. I miss who we were. He looked at me. Can we start again? I thought about it. Not because I wanted him back, because I wanted to answer honestly. No. His eyes dropped. I understand. You deserve a life where you don't have to control someone to feel valuable. He nodded. And I deserve one where I don't have to become smaller to keep someone beside me. He looked at me. Were you ever boring? I smiled. No. He laughed softly. You weren't. I shook my head. I was tired. That was the truth. I hadn't been boring. I had been carrying too much. And sometimes, when a person is exhausted, the people benefiting from their exhaustion call them boring because they don't recognize the woman underneath the responsibility anymore. Daniel smiled sadly. I'm sorry. I know. We sat quietly for a moment. Then he said, Do you think we could have been different? I looked through the window at the rain. Yes. He waited. If we had told each other the truth sooner. That was the final lesson. Not every marriage ends because love disappears. Sometimes it ends because fear becomes stronger than honesty. Sometimes people betray the person they love because they are terrified of losing control. And sometimes the person who seems boring is actually the person who has been holding the entire relationship together. I left that restaurant alone. But for the first time in years, being alone didn't feel like failure. It felt like freedom. The vacation Daniel took with my best friend had been booked in my name. The hotel room had been paid for with my money. The lies had been built around my identity. They thought they were taking something from me. They were wrong. They gave me the one thing I had forgotten how to give myself. A choice. The choice to stop proving my worth. The choice to stop accepting disrespect simply because I had loved someone once. And most importantly, the choice to understand that being loved should never require you to disappear. Sometimes the person who calls you boring is simply uncomfortable because you've stopped entertaining their control. Sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals who was never really standing beside you. And sometimes the greatest vacation you can take isn't to another country. It's the journey back to yourself. If this story made you think differently about love, trust, or the people you keep closest to you, remember this. Never let someone convince you that your peace is boring, just because your peace no longer benefits them. And if you ever find yourself wondering whether you're asking for too much by demanding honesty, respect, and loyalty, you're not. Those things aren't too much. They're the minimum. And sometimes, losing someone who refused to give them to you is not the end of your story. It's the moment your real story finally begins.